I'm really excited to share this fun air dry clay project with you today. There are so many cute ideas for air dry clay and this is one of them. Welcome to my channel. I'm Sarah and I create videos to inspire you to be creative. Arts and creativity is therapeutic and relaxing and we all need a bit of that, so enjoy. Like with all my air dry clay projects, I break them down into small, easy and simple steps so that you can also create something beautiful from air dry clay. I often create an internal structure for my air dry clay pieces. This time I need to add a little weight to the base, so I'm adding a small stone inside the tin foil. Do make sure your pebbles or stones are fully dry before we use them for the project. This is going to be a little bird sculpture with an added twist to it. To form the bird's head, I'm adding in a ping pong ball, just to give some hollow structure at the top of the bird, as I want the weight at the very base. The tail of the bird I want to form as a slight hollow, and so I've stacked some cardboard and taped it together, and I'm using this to help create the form and the structure by wrapping the tin foil around this, and then later I will remove this part. I create my air dry clay pieces like this so that I have a structure inside of the clay, otherwise we'd have a really solid chunk of clay that would take an awful long time to dry. This way we can take our time and create this structure from tin foil. You can also add wire within the structure, and I'll show you another project in one of my next videos all about this. So definitely let yourself enjoy this part of the sculpting process. I really enjoy it, and if we need to add little bits here and there, we can just keep adding that tin foil in and building it up, all in our own time. If you find it easier to add a little bit of glue, then add some glue into this as well. You would just want to make sure that the glue was 100% dry before going in with the air dry clay. You can see our little bird shape coming together, and I'm trying to be as neat as possible with that tail, so I neatly folded some tin foil and added some extra there. You can keep adding layers of tin foil, and if you have a part that needs bulking out, then you just add in some more tin foil like I did there, and then I find to hold it all together I put another piece around it in this way. Again, you can glue it if you need to. As we will be adding air dry clay to the top of this, don't forget to make it that little bit smaller than you want your final piece to be, to allow room for the outer layer of clay. The pebble that I first put in is sitting nice and firmly at the base inside the tin foil, and I'm really happy with the overall shape. Ready to move on to our air dry clay. Out of the packet, the clay should be lovely soft and pliable, just like this. In a sculpting project, I often pinch the clay flat between my fingers like this, but you can take a rolling pin and roll out the clay so that you have the same thickness throughout. But don't worry, it really doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I love about this kind of project. As I always say, don't forget to roll and turn so that the clay doesn't get stuck to your surface. The rolled out clay is then wrapped around the tinfoil bird in whatever way works for you. It really is whatever way works for you. So what I'm showing you here is I'm starting off with the tail end here where I want a nice straight edge. So I've cut a straight edge and then I'm wrapping the clay around. Where it doesn't want to bend anymore, we can take a knife and either cut a slit or cut this away. There is absolutely not one correct way of doing this, absolutely any way so that you can get the clay around the piece lovely and evenly. So you see I've cut it away here and then I will add some more clay and we will sculpt it and smooth it together. If you feel it's going wrong and you're getting in a bit of a mess, perseverance is definitely the key. You should take a look at my last video where I made a large plant pot. It certainly went through its ugly duckling phase, but then it came out the other end and I was really happy with it. So always persevere, you can always backtrack a little. Air dry clay is so forgiving, you can add a bit, take a bit away. If you're finding it's getting a little dry, then add a little bit of water to your fingers and let this help you. But as you can see here, I've added another piece of the clay, and then where those two bits of clay join, I'm just smoothing the joint together and sculpting it. At this stage we don't need the score and slip method, we just need to sculpt it and smooth it round with our fingers. As I say, adding a little bit of water if the clay is getting dry. If it's still nice and soft, then don't add water at this stage. I could make this kind of project all day long. I absolutely love sculpting and working with the air dry clay. As we're working with the clay, always keep thinking about the shape and the structure you want to create and the final design, so you can use your fingers in a way to sculpt that clay. If you haven't added enough in one area, you can take a section of clay and smooth this on. If you haven't made anything like this before, then do dive right in and give it a go. The best way to learn is just by getting the clay in our hands. It's practicing and playing with the clay. For the underside of the tail, I have a flat rolled out piece of clay, so I've just cut away the excess and I'm going to add this underneath. All scraps of clay that you're not using at the time, do scrunch these back together and wrap them back up if you can and keep them fresh for later. I have seen some people add some white glue to the structure before adding the clay on top, but I find there's a bit of grip to the tin foil, and so actually it's not necessary to do this. But as I say in all of my videos, you find your way of what works for you. I just show these videos on my channel for inspiration, and I hope it does inspire you. So if you are enjoying my videos, please do subscribe and hit the like button. There's also a super thanks button underneath, and I love it when some of you support me in that way, so a big thank you. As you can see, I'm adding the clay in sections and I'm really not being precious about it at all. I'm just trying to cover that piece with clay and really sculpting and smoothing it as I go. If you don't fancy making a bird, there are so many different projects you could start in this way. What else would you make in this way? Please do comment below. Most of all, I like to use my hands to sculpt, but I often use a knife as well, but you can use anything you have to hand that helps you sculpt. For this whole time I've left the cardboard section in to help give me structure, and the piece is starting to go a little dry now, so I can take a bit of water and start smoothing it out. If you have a metal card as well, you can use something like this to really smooth out the clay. If you are struggling to get the clay as smooth as you would like, don't forget we can sand the clay down once it's fully dried. But if you are struggling or you're not enjoying the smoothing process of the clay, then I often suggest adding some texture. Texture works wonders, and it can give that lovely dimension to the clay as well. I've added enough clay to my piece now, so I've taken all the scraps together, rolled them together. If they're going ever so slightly dry, take a little bit of water on your hands, roll the clay again, and then put it back in your packet and seal it tightly. It'll be good to go next time you're ready to create then. A final bit of smoothing, then I'm going to leave it to dry. I'm going to leave the cardboard in just while it dries to begin with, and then I will take this out, and once it's dry we will put some clay on the inside, and I'll show you that a little bit later. A few days ago I made another one of these birds, so it's been drying for about 4 days now. So I have my sandpaper, it's fully dried, and I can lightly sand down any imperfections if you wish. If you're doing quite a bit of sanding of the air dry clay, make sure you wear a mask. You really don't want to be breathing in any of those particles. With a soft cloth, clearing up well once you're done. The next fun part comes to painting. How would you paint yours? Mine's going to be a little blue tit, and so I've put some pencil lines to just guide me, and I've worked out where I want to paint, and so I can then go in and paint. I'm using some acrylic paints for this. For me, my process now is to do the base coat as acrylic paint, and I do 1 or 2 coats of acrylic paint all over the bare air dry clay. Some people like to go in with a gesso or a base coat first, but I find as long as you have a really good top varnish or over the top of everything right at the end, doing 1 or 2 really good coats of varnish, then everything works really well. So I go in and paint all these lovely colours, lovely bright springy colours on my air dry clay. Once you've done one section, make sure you prop it up where it's not painted and then let it fully dry, and then you can go in with your next colour or your next layer of paint. Just don't let the paint touch anything else, otherwise you risk it peeling off. And make sure you let that paint dry even more than you think, otherwise it will start to peel off. I've loosely based this on a blue tit, and so this is how I'm choosing to paint mine. But the second one, once that's dry, I fancy making that one different and maybe some red colours, so that one's going to be based on hopefully a chaffinch. The second one is currently drying well, and I'll show you how to finish off the inside of the tail very soon. If you want to decorate yours too, don't worry if you don't have a steady hand or you can't paint in such detail. There are always other options. You could add some napkins and some tissue onto this with some glue and add your design in that way, or you could just paint one solid colour. That would be beautiful, and then you could also add some dots. I've done lots of different videos with lots of different designs and different ways for beginners, and as I said before, you could always add some texture, and that works really well on items like this. If you make one, it's your project and it's for you to enjoy. I absolutely love making these videos for you to inspire you, and I'm really excited about another project that I'm in the middle of that I'm going to show you very soon, which is sculpting another little character, and I think you will love it too. A good steady hand here, but do you know, a dot for the eye works perfectly lovely too. I often put the opposite end of the paintbrush into the paint and use this as my dotting tool. To finish this bird off, I just add lots of little details with the acrylic paint. After a couple of days, the bird that I was making at the beginning of the video has now firmed up enough so that I can add some clay on the inside. To add wet clay to the dry clay, we need to just dampen the dry clay where it's going to attach together. I've roughly measured how deep the insert is, and I'm cutting some clay so that this will fit within there. It's best to try and do it as neatly as we can, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect, as we can sculpt and smooth this together at the later stages. So don't forget to dampen the outer rim of the clay with just a little bit of water, and then we insert this inside and then blend all those edges and smooth the edges down together. You can use a tool or your finger for this. And then to add some clay at the bottom, I've rolled a tiny piece of the air dry clay and I push this and sculpt this down in place with the back end of my knife. I blended and smoothed it all nicely, and then I left it to dry for another couple of days until everything was completely dry. And so then I go in and I'm going to paint this with some nice bright acrylic paints, just like I did the other bird, making sure I let the acrylic paint dry really well between coats. These birds are going to be matchstick holders. And so I thought if I got my rough sandpaper, I'd be able to use this to attach a section to the bird. But that doesn't seem to work, so I'm cutting a section out of the matchbox, and then I glue this, and I can simply glue this with super glue in place. To hold it in place overnight, I'm adding some elastic bands. The acrylic paint was lovely and dry before I did this, and now the glue is fully dry and we can varnish it in whatever varnish you wish. I do have a video that shows us all about the different varnishes that I like to use, so please do take a look at that one. Air dry clay really is a fantastic craft medium, and I have lots of different projects and ideas to inspire you over here on my channel. As you see, these work really well. They're great to put next to your candles, just not too close to the candles. Will you be making one? Let me know below. I love this project, I really do. Thank you for watching, and check out the next creative video.